Hello. Sorry. I wasn't sure if the live was on for a minute, so I was trying to fix that. But hello there. Welcome to my cake kitchen. My name is Gladys, and over here I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate cake decorating easily. As part of that objective, I create baking tutorials live, identify a particular bake, and then we talk through all of that, hopefully achieving the result we need in the end. Occasionally, we engage in chit chat videos where we talk about things that are generally baking related and all things cake, and generally about life also. And then there is a time when I undertake a bake and where most things I'm doing is familiar or has been repeated time and again on the channel. We undertake a baking related subject or a baking business related subject. We answer some questions and then I hand you useful tips to help you, especially if you're a baker who is looking to transition, tips to help you navigate your hobby baking journey or even your baking business journey. So if it's your first time you're being here, hello there and welcome. There is Anelia Gandhi in the chat. Hello there, Anelia. I hope you are well, and I hope all of you watching today are well. If you're joining the stream, that will be fantastic. But if you're not and you'll catch me on replay, hello and thanks for your company today. I hope you find some value. Today we're making a 5-inch simple red velvet cake alongside a vanilla cake. These are cakes I have made time and again on the channel. So we are not going to be repeating all the things we've done, and I'm not going to be talking you through the entire processes unless exactly necessary. And at the end of the video, I will link resources about other videos, same ones that I have repeated. So essentially, I'm just inviting you into my kitchen to watch me on a baking day whilst we talk about some of the baking related subject. So if necessary, I'll talk through some ingredients. That is if it is really necessary at all. But otherwise, I have made red velvet cakes and vanilla cakes time and again. And if you're new here, I'm assuming that you'll stick around. So I'll try and give you as much information, but there are videos that are dedicated to the entire baking process where I talk you through every exact thing that I have done. So today there's no need to repeat that because by doing that, sometimes it is so task focused that I am not able to talk to you as much or engage in the chat, which I know is equally important to those of you who have made the choice to be here with me today. So thank you again if you're here to catch up on all things baking, and also whilst we're at it, be kind to consider liking the video. It kind of gives me an edge and also notifies YouTube that we are here and we're trying to have a great experience. That will be helpful to the channel growth. It is free, and besides, if you don't know how to like the video, if you're watching me on mobile, on the screen top right, there is 3 dots over there. If you tap on the dots, it should bring you a selection of icons. You have the thumbs up, thumbs down, there's the share and repost button, and of course there is a ton of information there. So do kindly consider liking the video, and where possible, consider joining the community here. Of course, I'm a baking channel. I essentially undertake baking. That is what we are focused on with simple, informative tutorials. But we are also humans and we have a safe community here. We support each other. Most people come here to engage with us and also interact with each other in the groups. And we are super kind with each other. It's a very positive community we have on here. So you don't have to be a baker to be a part of what we do here. Yesterday, we had a rather sad or disappointed issue with one of our friends of the channel who had her car stolen. I was supposed to get in touch with her, something I... Bear with me. Is it? Right. Sometimes we have trolls turn up in the group chat that tries to make things a little bit awkward for all of us. We'll try not to encourage that. So thank you for that. In the chat, I encourage us all to be supportive of each other because whilst I am the baker and the face of the channel, I try to give you a great experience by making it your show so that it's interactive. But I will also encourage you to be wary of other people We are largely a virtual community. I don't see you, but you're in your workplaces and you make time to probably engage with me as a form of escapism or find some connection. So in the chat, I am particularly, it's important to me that the chat is kept positive, respectful, um, disagreeing with each other in a mindful way and positive way is not a bad thing. Disagreement is completely welcome as long as it is still polite, respectful, and tolerant of other people's views. Those are the simple boundaries I have on here. We don't tolerate bad language, trolling, unnecessary trolling, and disruptions in the chat. We don't do that. And on that note, there is Dolly in the chat. Dolly is a friend of the group, of the channel. Yesterday, Dolly reported to us she had her car stolen. Dolly, I was just mentioning that before you came on. In my mind, I was supposed to text you just to see how you're going. I am so sorry I haven't managed to do that, but I hope you are getting some progress reports on the car situation. I I would have rather text you to ask. I'm just wondering how thieves manage to steal your car, but I hope that despite the disappointment and inconveniences and disruptions that may have caused you and your family, the police are on it and you are getting some resolve. But good morning again. Well, it's not good morning, it's 12:30. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to have you. And on that note, I'm going to stop yapping. If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of talk that happens on here, but that is because I am making up for some time, because once this mixer starts screaming noisily, I am not going to be able to talk to you. There's Tinkler 4 from New Zealand. Tinkler, hey, what a pleasure to have you today. And there is Anelia. Anelia, I am making a red velvet cake as well as a simple vanilla cake, both of which I am baking today. And also, I know that some of you may not be bakers, but you may like cake and you may want to get value for your cake. So if that's the case, you want to stick around, because I'll be giving you some tips on how to get best value for your cake, especially when you're talking to a cake maker, how to approach them, how to get a best deal for yourself. I'm not talking about going for a cheap box standard cake. I'll give you some scenarios of customers who have got the best value for cakes, more than they have paid for from me. But that is not inviting the unnecessary attention of coming to me for a cake cheaper than you would normally afford. But as a cake maker, there is something about the interaction that we have with our customers. And as artists, there's always a heart posture that wants us to give the best value to you. So if you're in the chat, even if you're not a cake maker, if only you ever want to buy a cake for your wife, your child, or for yourself, or for any occasion you can think of in your life, stick around, because I'm going to be handing you some very useful tips on how to get the best value for your cake, especially if we're talking about going into ordering custom cakes. And on that note, I have some eggs here. So generally when I'm baking, this is not a structured or organized tutorial. This is just a chit chat about me organizing in my kitchen for a baking day. As a result, some of the things I haven't managed to follow so closely. When you are into baking, you will hear the word room temperature a lot, where your solid fat has to be brought to a certain temperature where it can mix and easily forming the base structure of your cake. I'm using the creamy method here, but as you can see, it is a little, it was predicted to be warm at 22 degrees in England, in Northampton today. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that. And my kitchen is a little bit cold. I'm not complaining, to be honest. Cold weather days are okay for any baker. I can tell you that for nothing. But for baking, that doesn't seem to help. So I have my butter here, as in margarine here. That is not as spreadable as I would like it. So normally what I'll do on this note is pop this in a microwave for about 40 seconds to a minute at 30-second intervals, so that I can get it to the temperature I want. So I'm going to do that. And for the eggs, normally you're advised to have room temperature eggs, but sometimes the room temperature eggs are still cold. So for the eggs, I've put them in a bowl, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some warm water. This is a kettle of warm water. You want to be careful though, because sometimes if the kettle has boiled, you are likely to boil your eggs instead of, let's see. Yeah, I have dropped my eggs in warm water, and I'm going to drop that in a microwave for, let's count, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is exactly 10 seconds here, and I'm going to check that and take that out. There is Delaney in our chat. Delaney is our moderator. Delaney, how are you, darling? It's been a while. How is band, and are you in school today? I'm going to pop that back in the microwave again for another, say, 10 seconds. Let's see how we fare with that. So we have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And there we go. So on that note, we have a spreadable consistency of margarine here that I am going to pop in the mixer. Before that though, I'm going to measure the sugar. I am making a red velvet cake. For those of you asking, we are making a red velvet cake, and I am also going to be making a vanilla cake. And whilst we're doing both of those things, I am going to be handing you some tips on how you can get a cake for good value, perhaps more than a cake that is more than you can, a cake that is more than you can afford sometimes. You know, there are tricks of the trade, and take it from a baker. That would be a good way to get the best out of your cake ordering experience. But I'll be talking through all of that when I'm done with what I'm doing here. So we have some sugar in there. I'll leave exact quantities in the description box at the end of the live. So if you're just logging in, not to worry at all. Yeah. Oh, Delaney, that is okay. You are doing well for yourself and for what you want to achieve. So we are willing you on. Do not be hard on yourself, and do not worry about coming back here sooner. I'm talking to my moderator, Delaney. Delaney is in school. She also has band, and she has an active social life, and it's also active in her community and stuff like that. But she stops around here to be of help and to moderate the chat so that you can have a great experience. And that is simply because the job I do here is so task focused. It can be difficult for me to manage talking to you in the chat when I am undertaking the bake. So her help is so much appreciated. But unfortunately, she's got stuff to do. So Delaney, send some love Delaney's way. Put some heart emojis in the chat for Delaney. And Delaney, we are willing you on. We're wishing you all the best. Come back whenever you feel ready or you are done, okay? I am in the UK from where you are watching me now. So if it's the first time we're meeting, hello there, I'm Gladys. I'm a baker. And besides baking, I make all sorts of things that are cake related. So welcome to the channel. And today we are making a red velvet cake. It's a 5-inch cake. It's actually a customer cake. But we have some videos that I made yesterday. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the ingredients out, and then I'll move the mixer in front of me. But in the meantime, I'm going to get the mixer to start. And if I go quiet, perhaps when I turn the mixer on, don't worry about it. It's because when the mixer goes on, it can be a little bit loud, and talking over it can be a little bit difficult. So I'm going to turn this on medium high. Like I said earlier, if you're just joining us in the chat, I did mention that I have made this red velvet cake. I have a full-on recipe, and I have made the cake time and again on a live. So I'm not looking to repeat the same process again. So we are literally just hanging out. And Carl, Yes, Carl, we're making a red velvet cake. It's a customer cake, but it's more like I'm inviting you into my kitchen today because I do undertake very serious tutorials where I focus on the baking information and the processes and technique and all of that. If you check the live format, you will find more videos like that. Except today, I just thought this is something I would have been doing even if it wasn't on a live. So it's a chilled back tutorial more than anything, and when necessary, I'll pop some tips in the description box and I'll link some of the previous videos of the same processes for you to get some use from. But wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're in the UK, pleasure to have you. I know it's lunchtime in most offices, and I've been surprised by the number of people and who watches my channel. I think 2 days ago, I had an IT professional on their lunch break watching me. I'm like, what? But yes, you never know who is watching. But wherever you are, I hope you're having a good afternoon, you're having a good day, and we're willing you on. If you're having some trouble in your day as well, look. Some days life is just life. So we hope you find some peace in your struggles and all is well with you. In the meantime, I'm just going to turn the mixer on. I can see you probably can't see the mixer, but I'm just going to turn that on whilst I organize for some of the other ingredients. Right, so let's talk. I actually also have like a vanilla cake to make, and both will bake at the same time. So I am just trying to get that also sorted. I'm just getting about 425 grams. And I am going to try and get this in a spreadable consistency. It's very solid. So in the oven, microwave oven for about 20 seconds. So let's count 20 seconds from now. It is still solid. So I'm gonna let that go again. There we have it. So I have both my vanilla and red velvet cake that is creaming. Thank you. If you're in the chat, like I told you, it's very loud in my kitchen, so if I don't talk, I'm not ignoring you at all. But this will be over shortly and I'll be back yapping away, okay? I'm going to get some eggs here. The irony is, this cake is going to be for a barrister. So I better get everything right so I don't get sued. Right, that is the eggs here. Now we're doing some more eggs on there. There's buttermilk here. I'm just going to pop this buttermilk in the oven a little bit. And with that we have a spoonful of vinegar. What I haven't done actually, which is more important, is there is buttermilk here. Dolly, I am baking red velvet. Okay, this is, remember, I've made this recipe on here time and again, which is why I am not talking about it a lot. We are making a red velvet cake, right? This, 1 second. Like I said, I would be doing this even if I wasn't on a live. So I thought I will bring you along the experience of being in my kitchen on a non-tutorial day. Right, so we have self-raising flour. We need about, I have more than I need. We need about 475. With some salt and cocoa powder. The cocoa powder in red velvet brings a note of cocoa to it. I'm sifting the cocoa powder just to rid of lumps, that is if there are any, but generally you'll find that these are pre-sifted anyway. Right, so we've got that cocoa sauces. I'll leave it to set, and then we can get some more flour for the vanilla cake as well. We've got cocoa base. We need another $45. And then we need there you go. All done. So our flour is now measured. Our oven is preheating, and I am working my work surface. Okay, there you go. There we are. There we go. I noticed if you are watching, you probably can't see the other mixer, so I've just brought it forward a little bit for you. Right, so we're just going to finish the red velvet cake here. Right, so into the egg and the cream mixture here, I'm going to start adding the flour a little bit at a time. I'm going to slow this down. Mind the noise of the other right, and then alternatively I am now going to add the buttermilk, and whilst that is happening I am going to add the red food coloring, which is what we rely on to get red velvet, right? Okay, and the final bit of the buttermilk is gone in, and the flour too. Right, so Shana, thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. Right. That's a good thing, is to move this mixer across over there, and I would use my hands, but I don't fancy doing that right now because I need my clean hands again for the other for the vanilla. So our red velvet butter is done. I'm just going to mix that thoroughly so that we have a homogeneous mix. At this point you want to be careful not to over mix your batter. You'll see what it looks like on the inside. Just making sure the butter is all mixed together. And what I might do is move this mixer away from here. Right, I have my whole work surface now. And if you want to see what the butter looks like, this is the red velvet cake butter. What I am going to do is I'm going to now dish it between two 5-inch tins. These are baking 4-inch deep. Look what I've done. Okay. Really? Sam, you think this is overmixed already? I can tell you it isn't. I've done this time and again. Plus, the idea of overmixing the batter is oversimplified to the point where it's like, oh, if you don't mix your batter right, Well, I'd like you to explain that to me better. Maybe there's something you know that I don't, and I could be wrong, but I can tell you it isn't at all, especially for a batter like this. There is much fat in it to just popping up the air bubbles. And then for me, I will create a hole in the center. And I'm going to wash my hands, and then we can move on to the vanilla one. Now we have this right here. Now that's the vanilla cake. What have I got here? I've got to clean my hands. Yes, Dolly, it is red. I'm just giving this white, and then we will give that white too. And do you struggle with getting your cakes red looking, Dolly? Let's see. Right, so it's time to now add our flour to the vanilla cake. Then I have some buttermilk that I add to my vanilla cake to increase moisture. And the final bit is gone in now. And I have a spatula. Last time I did this, I ended up like running the mixer over. Right. So, yep, that's a vanilla cake batter. Right. I'm just going to okay, that is done now. The red velvet is still on the countertop, by the way. Going into. Who likes a vanilla cake there? Never known anyone to be this excited about a vanilla cake. So, okay, there you go. I like this mixer, but the grip. Yeah, so we have our vanilla cake all done here. And what I'm going to do is spread that over 2 5-inch tins as well. Yep, all done. We now have the vanilla cake. If I stamp it on the countertop, it just trying to get rid of air bubbles. Plus, a little part of me wants to mix it with, no, it's fine. So, we have 4 lots of 5-inch cakes here. You know, right, my work surface. And one last tip, our oven has been on for at 180 degrees C for the last, what, God knows, 10 minutes, 12 minutes since I started this. And also for a home oven, depending on, ovens function differently, right? So sometimes the advice is very specifically tailored to one specific oven. However, for my home oven, I have hot spots. So to mitigate that, a good tip for you, especially if you want to be able to control the heat in the oven or temper it slightly without that affecting the bake generally, this is going to bake for 55 minutes to an hour, 15 minutes, depending on the oven circulation. So I'm going to reduce that to 170 degrees C instead of the 180. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bowl of water underneath the oven, which will serve as a cooling mechanism whilst the cake is baking. It guarantees a lighter textured bake, which is more even, if you like, so that you don't have crispy dry crusts on the cake. And that's a good tip if you love baking. That is something you can do. But if you're in the chat and you have questions for me, please bear with me. Let me get this in the oven, and just, you can see my tasks are done and I'll have time to talk to you properly. That was the water you had in the oven, and I'm going to put the cakes in now. Right, what says the time? It's exactly 1:15. This should bake about 55 minutes to an hour, 15 minutes. So that should take us up to about, that will be, an hour will be 2:15, and an hour 15 will be 2:30. I don't suppose we'll be here for that long, because obviously, like I said, normally if I was taking a full-on baking tutorial, we will stay on the live until the bake is done, so that we can see the result of our efforts. Except because this is not a full-on baking tutorial, bear with me. I am trying to see your questions in the chat, and it looks like my internet is not being super friendly today. So hello there. Hey, if you're just joining us, I made myself some banana is in my head, vanilla and red velvet cake, which has now gone in the oven, and it should bake up until about 2:30, maybe 2:15. We'll have a look. But I know much of those of you in the UK, perhaps if you're at work, you're on your lunch break, and if you're not in the UK and you're somewhere else, it's still morning for you and you're getting around your morning. So hello there and welcome to the stream. I'm Gladys. I love to bake, and I do all things baking here today, except, oh, I see what's happening. My Wi-Fi is not turned on, which is why I thought, what's happening with my chat today? Right. So hello. Welcome to the stream. Okay. Yeah, I was like, why? Right. So if you're in the chat and you've left me a question I couldn't answer, I'm just going back in time just to see what you guys are saying to me over there. But hey, our cakes are baking now. Delaney is gone. Our moderator Dolly is still here. Dolly, do you struggle with getting your red velvet cake red? Is that why? And Shana Lee was out here spreading love. Sammy Joe thought our cake had overmixed. Sammy Joe, I'd like to know why. And maybe you should explain that better to me. I've done this 1,001 times. I think the idea of overmixing your batter is so oversimplified. Before you overmix your batter to develop the gluten, which will lead to a bread-like sort of cake texture, you would have done so many things wrong. But one of the inhibiting factors for overdevelopment of gluten is fat. So when you have a cream mixture, the the likelihood of your butter becoming overly mixed is slightly low, unless perhaps you turn the mixer on to whip it or mix it on a very high, medium high speed for, let's say, a minute or two. Then that means you are overworking the butter. But exactly at 40 seconds, when your flour is just about mixed into the butter, and then you have to take it off and then mix it with a spatula, it will barely overmix the butter. But context matters. If, say, I was mixing macarons, I wouldn't be vigorously mixing my butter like that, because macarons are very delicate. And if I was mixing egg whites into my butter, egg white, and the technique for deriving, say, a white cake, that is, if I was using that white cake method, I'd have to be careful, because mixing it over vigorously will pop out the air bubbles and lead to a very stodgy or dense looking cake. So the idea of overmixing butters in baking is too oversimplified. You'll have to do so many things wrong to get something so bad. But that is just by the way. That is only because thingy in the chat was say Sammy Joe thought I had overmixed my butter. I'm not contesting her point of view, but Sammy Joe, maybe you can come back and explain that better for us. I was wondering what was the purpose of water at the bottom. I've heard others do it. Never knew. Okay, Tinkler. Tinkler, you know now. Tinkler, Chubbs Peterson. Hello there. Tinkler, I've just explained that. The water in the oven sort of serves as a cooling mechanism for adding, say, moisture into the heat that is radiating. So it leads to a more even bake, and your crusts are a little more tender. Because baking is cooking in dry heat, if you like. The heat is too warm, it can crust your baking goods so quickly. Depending on what result you are aiming for, sometimes the water is unnecessary. For instance, if I was looking to bake crispy cookies, then I won't want to put water in my oven, because it would just make the cookies a little bit brittle. But I want crispy cookies that are crispy on the side, on the outside, and gooey on the inside. So the water in baking oven is very context based, and you have to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what is appropriate for what recipes and your own goals. And I hope that makes sense. At the start of the live, I did say that part of the live today is also to give you some tips on how you can get yourself a good value for your cake if you were a baker, or if you were not a baker and you were looking to buy cake. And that is because as a cake maker, I deal with customers a lot. My business is very customer facing. And whilst I create these live tutorials to inform and educate you, one of the jobs I do also is bake for customers. And for that reason, if you were looking to get some tips on how to get your best cake offer, maybe get a cake you really couldn't afford, or how can you get yourself a cake bargain, right? So, and that is also because I know for most of you in the chat, you are not, some of you are bakers, you run baking businesses, or you are hobby bakers, but some of you also are here to just watch, interact, and catch up. And baking is not the thing you do, but I'm sure you would like to buy yourself a cake on a special occasion, like a wedding, like a birthday. You would like to show some love to loved ones by buying them cakes where necessary. So how do you even go about buying a cake, right? So before I give you the advice on how to buy a cake or how to get the best value for a cake, I guess let's go back to the type of cake makers or cake businesses you are likely to encounter in your life. Generally, there is the store-bought cake. Store-bought cake is not necessarily bakery style. It's just store-bought, where you can go to a particular store to buy your cake, or you can go to your regular supermarket where they have a section where you can buy your cake from. So if you were looking to buy cake in, say, the UK, you can go to Tesco's, Sainsbury's. your Lidl or your Aldi. But then I'll save Lidl for a minute because Lidl tends to have like an in-house fresh bakery section, which is slightly different from pre-made, highly produced, and nothing close to what cake looks like. In fact, one of these days I had the displeasure of having to shop for a short-board cake, and it is not anything I will recommend. And we're talking short-board cake that are pre-made and boxed already. You can never compare a homemade cake or a custom cake to a short-board cake. So if you're going to get a cake from a custom cake maker, or at least the difference between a custom cake maker and a short-board cake, pre-made, pre-produced kind of cake, perhaps it's better to get the idea clear that you are not purchasing the same thing. It's a bit like if you went to Chanel for their custom service for this Chanel suit that you wanted tailor made to you, it is obviously going to be a kind of different service compared to Primark. Okay, so in terms of taste, in terms of presentation, in terms of design, they are completely two different things. And I find that the misinformation and sometimes the lack of education on the subject of cake businesses influences the customer in a way where they tend to believe that all cakes are the same and don't tend to understand the prices that are related to specific cake services or businesses. So if you are somebody, there's a budget for everybody and there's a place for that specific budget. So if you're looking for a super budget friendly cake that costs say 20 quid, I can tell you for nothing that you can get a Sainsbury's produced box of cake for let's say £10 or £15 for that price. But at that point, you are not even buying yourself a cake. You are buying yourself something that is called a cake with ingredients that you cannot even name. Okay? And that is just like everything else that you can also buy from a supermarket that you have no idea what it is, but it tastes good to eat. So that is the distinction that I'd like to make about pre-produced shortboard boxed cakes. Then you have bakery style cakes. Bakery style cakes are general bakeries that have set up as businesses where they produce the cakes generally for large audiences or customer base, but the cakes are made in-house. There's generally a specific recipe to follow, and some of them combine the processes of commercial style baking and home style baking. And some of their ingredients are also mass produced and optimized for that sort of baking. So for instance, when you go to Costco as a brand name has like an allocated bakery section where you can get in-house bakery style cakes. You're talking sheet cakes to simple cakes that have design elements on it with piping details. So Costco is a typical example of a popular brand name that has a bakery style cake session. But also we have independent bakery style cakes in and around where we live, where you can go to say, I don't know about America what your bakery style cakes look like, but in the UK you have your cake box. And you have sometimes independent family run bakeries where they bake cakes, but they are targeted at larger customer bases. So that is also something to think about. Then we have home-based custom cake businesses. The home-based custom cake businesses do sometimes tend to have generalized designs for you, but you have the key option of tailoring your cake to suit you. As in, you can bring an idea to the table and that will be created into a cake for you. And that is what kind of distinctively makes a whole kind of difference in terms of pricing to the other options I have already mentioned. For instance, for independent family run bakeries, for instance, you could get to have a custom cake made for you, but sometimes the boundaries within which that can be created is also very limited. Whereas, say, if you went to an independent custom cake maker, they can then take your cake idea and then bring it to life for you. So you are getting a very customized, tailor made service for you. With that said, it's also important that, say, independent bakeries, independent like style bakeries and custom services do have some things that they share in common. For instance, not all custom cakes services will be able to tailor make your cake for you, simply because sometimes the skill that they specialize in, the services they provide, is specifically limited. But the good thing is that they will always make an option to make sure that if your cake fits into their style of designs, they will be able to meet your need for you. Some of those, however, are not able to also provide like custom dietary preferences, and that is simply because we want to be able to save you. Because, for instance, my kitchen is super busy a lot of the time. I don't tend to take on special dietary cakes, and that is simply because of the fact that I just do not want the possibility of air contamination, like air contaminating your gluten-free flour or something, when I am also undertaking like gluten-based baking. And if I have a busy kitchen day where everything else is happening and your order is just the one, I'm going to have to find a day allocated specifically for you, and perhaps I'm not going to be able to do that very much just because I don't want to risk your health. I saw something online recently from a cake maker who had trouble with a customer who was having a go at her and left her, I think, a 1-star review. And what's her reason? That this customer wanted a cake, and they were unable to provide the cake simply because on that day they were not able to take on a dietary specific cake. And then this customer goes online and leaves a 1-star review and berates this baker because they couldn't get a dietary specific cake, cupcakes, I think. And I'm thinking to myself, do you realize that this cake maker made a decision to put your well-being and your health against the risk of actually contaminating you with gluten something? So they decided to forgo the money, and I believe it was a large order, and they decided to forgo the money so that they could save you essentially. But the customer lacked the understanding of the decision and then went and left a very bad review, and also berating this baker for not being inclusive enough. Look, we try to be inclusive where possible, but where your health is at risk, as businesses, we don't want to risk our reputation. We also, more than anything, do not want to risk your health. So if a baker turns down your specific order for maybe a dietary specific need, there's nothing about it that is selfish. It's more like they are looking out for you as well. With that said, the categories of cakes you can purchase on the market is kind of tailored to specific budgets. So the custom cake option seems to be the extreme, as in most expensive on the spectrum. And obviously the pre-made shop board style cakes that are boxed are from the lower end, mid end to the top end, where you pay a real buck for your money. So with that said, if you were making a choice for a cake, what would be your option? There are 14 people in the chat there, 15. What would be your option? Would you go for your supermarket brand style cake? Why is that? And if you were buying from a bakery style, why would be the reason? And if you enjoy bakery style cakes like your Costco or your cake boxes, what is your reason? Is it because the cake themselves taste better for you, or you haven't had the option of exploring? What is the reason for your choice? And if you were to go for a custom cake, what do you think you are willing to pay for a custom cake? On this note, leave your suggestions in the chat over there. But whilst we are on the subject, like I said, if you do decide, I think if you do decide to go for a custom cake option, first of all, a few things to get value for your money is having an understanding of what the baker produces. That will set you on a good start. Because if you haven't had an understanding of the baker's work or their repertoire or their skill that is already online, and the information about their pricing and all of that, you might be walking into this with enthusiasm and a small budget, and yet you're setting yourself up for a fall. Because if you have a cake maker who has like a custom cake service or a custom cake business who has a minimum price purchase of, let's say, £90, they're not going to negotiate that with you. So if your budget is £70 and you're going for a cake that is £90, you're going to experience some sort of conflict that is so unwelcome and really unnecessary. So that's something to think about. So first of all, to get value for your money as a buyer of cake or somebody who is looking to purchase a cake, it's important to have a look around and see what your specific baker has to offer. If your baker has their price listing online wherever you're sourcing the information from, it's important for you to read the small print and have an understanding. Generally, I will say where it says starts from, it's not an actual price for a specific cake. It gives you a minimum starting point of the actual cake you are looking for. Those cakes are priced per serving or number of people. So where you see slices, servings, or number of people, it's interchangeable. So where you see a cake to serve, say 10 to 12 servings starts at £50, it means that the basic box standard cake from that starts at that point. But that also allows you, the customer, the option of customization. So if you want to add customized decorative elements, it increases from there. So take note today that starting price is completely different from a derived final quote for your personalized cake. But the starting price gives you a guide, if you like. So for instance, if you were buying a cake and you have customers, you're a customer and you're going to source for a cake, and you have, say, 10 people to feed, and the cake maker says 10 to 12 people, that is about, they're not going to be able to make you a cake specifically for 10 people. They're going to derive a cake for maximum, say, 12 people. So if you see 10 to 12 people or 10 to 12 servings, 10 to 12 slices, starting price £60, it means that on the minimum budget of your lowest decorated cake is £60. But that doesn't add customization. So the customization is if you wanted to add in the picture of your daughter or your child's dog or your favorite item showing on your cake with a lovely message. By the time you finish putting all those elements, that £60 cake might come to £75 or £80. So keep an eye on the starting prices, because the more information you have will put you forward. And also, if you take time to read the information about what this baker provides, it also sets you up as somebody who is really interested in what this baker does. So it creates a common ground for you to talk to them and for the communication to be collaborative. And if you can do that very well, that there is common grounds for you to keep talking, it will seem like you are contacting your baker for a conversation. And the more conversation you can hold with your baker about the subject of cake, and the more fun that conversation is set with context, the more connection you create with the baker and the better value you can derive out of it. Because if you roll up and you go, how much, especially those of you who have a habit of dropping in baker's DMs with photos, how much, without a hello, without a hi, without any form of introduction, you will not get a cake. Not from me, at least. Okay? But I don't, well, I don't want to make this about me, but my point is if you're going to get value for your cake, make an effort to establish some form of commonality and communication with your baker, because the more you do that, the better your chances of getting value for. But whilst you are looking around to find out information about them and what they do, when you do eventually decide to go and contact them for a cake, maybe start by being nice. Being nice will get you further than your money would ever get you. I can tell you that for nothing. As home baker businesses or home bakeries, we run as a business, but we have set this business because of a reason that is innately to us. Some of us, or most bakers, you will find either have full-time jobs, as in traditional corporate jobs, or other things they do, and then they have their businesses. And for those who just run the business exclusively, there's also a passion attached to it. And the more you take time to be nice to a baker, instead of just rolling up and going, take my money, I am paying you, better show up. Look, there's a reason I left traditional jobs to come and run a business. I didn't like to be told what to do, especially if it's stupid stuff, and especially if I'm trying to have a good day. So if you roll up with all your money and you're trying to boss me around because you think you're paying me, I could be done with the stress and not take your money, so you go somewhere else. But that is me and my value as a business owner. For you, it might be different. The point is, you don't have to be overly friendly with your baker, but manners and appreciation goes a really, really, really long way. So a good thing is, instead of dropping into a DM and going, hey, how much is this cake, how about maybe be polite enough to send them a message. Hello there, I trust you're well. I'm just trying to inquire about this cake. I have about 14 people. I'll leave some resources in the description when I'm done, just so that you can see how you can find some information to contact your baker if you want a cake. Because there's a specific language that will invite like friendly interaction that will lead to a connection, which should eventually give you value for the cake you desire, right? But if you drop in the email and go, hey, how much is this cake? I'm just going to ignore you. Okay. But that is just by the way. So if you do decide that you are going to contact your favorite baker for a cake, perhaps be polite. Hi there, I trust you're well. I'm just looking to make a quick inquiry for this cake. I am feeding 14 people. If you don't know the number, just guesstimate something. Guesstimate a number that you think that your worst case scenario you are going to feed people, and you will find that your baker will be forthcoming to you. That said, if you manage to get through all of that and you form a connection with your baker who comes to you requiring further information, don't just ghost them. Try and make conversation, right? And if you inquire about the price, maybe make an effort also not to try and bargain. Be upfront if possible. I find that people find it very tricky to talk about money. Okay, sometimes they know the budget is £50, but they're like, oh, I want this cake and I just want a simple cake. What you might determine as simple may not be simple for me, especially from a artist point of view. A polished cake that is stood here, so polished and fine with nothing on it, isn't going to be it's going to look in your eyes as a simple cake. But for me, the amount of time I may have taken to polish that cake so nicely for it to look like that is where the price comes. So simple might just not be simple enough. So if you have a budget, be upfront, especially if you've already taken time to look up the pricing information of this baker, you would have known what their minimum price is, or at least where they start from. So if their minimum cake in terms of the pricing looks like it starts at say £70, don't show up with £50 and demand an exact cake. Perhaps a good way to get your value, because I know times are hard and sometimes you have to get what you have, show up in your very honest self and be like, I'm inquiring about this cake. I have no idea. Be upfront, because half of the time when you're inquiring about a cake, you know nothing about cakes and the options that are available to you on the market. So lead with that, because leading with that tells me that even when you have a 3-tier cake and you're saying your budget is £50, it's forgiving. I can understand from that interaction that you have no idea what you're talking about, and all you're trying to do is get this beautiful cake, except because you don't have the understanding of how cakes are priced, you have a small budget and you want a great cake. I'm not mad. In fact, what I'll do then is I'll go out of my way to inform you and then redirect you by giving you options that may suit your budget that you have no idea of. But don't roll up with your specific needs and a budget that doesn't suit it and then demand a cake. And you'd be surprised how many times we deal with that all the time. I deal with that all the time, where the customer is not open-minded to accept that what they may want may just not be possible because their budget is so little, right? And I'm not knocking small budgets. I'm just saying attitude makes a huge difference if you're trying to get something that you cannot afford. I mean, you won't go to Primark and demand that their £6 t-shirt should be priced at £2 because you can only afford £2, right? But maybe if you went to Primark and you got one of their customer service assistants and said to them, look, something has happened urgently. I don't have money on me. I have £2. Do you have some of your returned shirts or shirts that are not on display, X catalog or something somewhere that I can just get? You'll be surprised how much support you can get out of that, and for that £2. And the reason is, at that point you are appealing to a person's humanity instead of what their business is serving you. So I'm saying that to say, if you have no idea about cakes but you're on a limited budget, treat your baker or the person attending to you as human. Be honest about your circumstances. Be upfront about your budget. And it's almost like putting the white flag up and going, look, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm trusting your judgment. But by investing or by then letting them lead you, you give them the opportunity to show up in their best knowledgeable self. Because you would rather believe most cake makers are just out here to help you. In fact, we are not even here to sell you cakes all the time. We're here to help you. Part of having this conversation with you here is trying to help you get value. And the value doesn't necessarily mean you have to order a cake from me, right? So that is something to note. With that said, one thing you should never ever do, I've already referenced that. Don't go in a baker's DMs with a simple message, how much, and then ignore them. And also, if you haven't researched them and you happen to get a quote from them, don't try to tell them that a certain baker quoted half the price. That is one way you never, in fact, if you ever did that to a baker, it's unlikely that in your lifetime they will ever make you a cake. So never, ever, 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 ever say, if you got a quote that was way above your budget, take a deep breath, because sometimes when you see the quote, it can shock you. You'll be like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And that is okay if you feel that way. But after you've calmed yourself down, first things first, make a point to go back to them and say, oh, thank you for that information. In fact, I wasn't expecting that at all. And that is because I have no knowledge about cakes, except the cake was pretty and I was hoping to get that. If you can adjust your budget, put your adjustment price in front of them. So if they quoted you a cake for say £120 and you knew that your budget was £80, however, you're willing to increase that 80 to 95, let the baker know. Tell them, I wasn't expecting that, perhaps more so because of my lack of understanding about cakes. However, I had intended a budget of £80 and I'm willing to raise it to 95. Is there anything you can do for me? I would appreciate some assistance and guidance on this subject. Trust me, you will get the best advice. Even if they can't make you that cake, they will give you a recommendation. They will inform you about your options. They will give you choices that will lead you to a cake that will be suitable for that budget, and it will not be low in quality. But for most people, when we see the quotes, we get scared and we ghost our baker. Try not to ghost your baker, because most bakers just want to assist you. That's all. So when you ghost bakers, depending on how the baker is processing stuff, it can lead to some difficult issues for the baker, because they like, especially for up and coming bakers. I mean, I've baked for almost 10 years, running it as a business for 6. As I've grown in business, I have grown in confidence. I have accepted certain things as a normality in my business. I have certain boundaries. I will quote you a cake. I will remind you once, and that is it. It's a polite reminder to say, the quote is here. Do you want to go on with the cake? And you always have an option to turn it down if you have to. That's okay. I'm not mad. It's fine. Okay. If there is a deadline, I will set a deadline for when you should get back to me. If I don't hear from you, it's cheerio, good day, and you never have to worry about being awkward around me, because my intention is not to drive a sale primarily for you. Okay, you don't have to buy a cake. You don't have to see me and be awkward. You don't have to even be be awkward about the cake you bought from my competitor. I'm okay. I'm cool with you. We are fine. But that comes from my own value system, my own journey, my own experiences. Whereas when I was starting my business, for most and up and coming businesses would know, when you ghost a baker, they begin to wonder whether they did something wrong, whether they start questioning their own self-value. And yes, that's not your fault as a customer, but it's a point to understand that there is really no need for ghosting a cake maker if you can't afford them. And that is just something you can bear in mind so that you can get a back for your cake. That said, have you got value for your cake before? What is the best cake you have gotten and you thought, oops, I could never have afforded this, but I'm glad to get myself a bargain? Leave that in the comment section. I will be interested to know. I don't know. I can't seem to see the chat at all. Yeah, KV in the chat had asked. I missed that. Does the mixer work like a KitchenAid? Yes. The mixers that are used for the baking were Kenwood's, the Chef XL, and an Orkma. It's an Amazon simple mixer that I have. I picked it up so that beginners will be able to get the best out of it. So yes, if you have a KitchenAid, it will work the same and you should have similar results. Damnation was asking about a chocolate cake. Unfortunately, I am not making a chocolate cake today at all. We are not making a chocolate cake, so hopefully, bear with me. We are not making a chocolate cake today, but there are times when we make chocolate cake and different sorts of cakes. So Ashley, hello Ashley, good afternoon. Ashley, where are you joining us from? Right, our cakes are still baking whilst I'm still telling you all about how to get value for your cake. especially if you speak to a cake maker. I hope that you find some value in the information I'm giving you. So we've already said the do's and don'ts, right? Don't show up, rock up at a baker with a photo of a cake demanding how much. Do not ghost your baker. Try to understand some information about your baker by sourcing some information about what they offer, their price point, and engage in conversations with your baker so that you can be guaranteed a good offer. Now, I'll tell you two instances of two different customers that, not a specific customer, but I'll give you some generalized view of some customers I have served in the past, right? I had a customer contact me, and generally, just to give you some intention, be open and vulnerable. And I'll tell you what, I'm not asking you to come and tell me all about your life's details, okay? But be open and vulnerable in that there is nothing that warms a cake maker's heart when they can identify heart with your purchase. Because what we tend to negate a lot of the time is we forget that cake is an emotional purchase. It forms part of an emotive celebration. Birthdays are emotive, they evoke a certain emotion, and they are a celebration of something that is emotionally significant. Not all birthdays are the same. People who have miscarried pregnancies before having a child will feel differently about the first birthday of that said child, and people who have struggled with pregnancies before having a pregnancy have a different emotion attached to their baby shower cake. People who have experienced a certain type of loss immediately after which they have a birthday have a different feeling. So cakes come with a certain associated feeling, especially for custom cake. If you were making a cake for a general birthday, say if you had 3 kids and you've had so many birthday, you're not going to care so much about the 14th birthday as you would have the 13th, the 11th birthday, because that's when they transitioned into digits and teenage years, right? So when they turn 13, when they go from 12 to 13, 13 to 18, 18 to 21. So 21, 18, 13, 10-year birthday. All of these are significant to different kind of people and how people feel about these days and dates, right? So when you are buying a cake, make sure that you can associate, you can put the story and your significance, the significance of that birthday cake to the cake maker. You'll be surprised how quick. It might be a manipulation tactic, and I'm telling you because I am. Acacia does makeup. Hey there, thank you for asking. You don't. I will come. There's a question in the chat. I will answer in a moment. Thank you for your question. I will answer you in a moment. So, I was just saying, put your story forward. So I have gone out of my way to give customers cakes that they will not be able to afford. Not that they knew, but I think when they received their cake, they were like, whoa, that wasn't the cake I was expecting. But anyway, I'm not complaining. Then they move on. Why? Because they told me the story around the cake. Like a lady who contacted me about a cake, and the cake had a very, very specific emotion about it. And the emotion was that they had struggled with fertility before they got to this particular pregnancy for which they wanted a cake. So I'm like, well, girl, I'm out here doing some good in the world, because at that point, you are not just appealing to me as a business, you are appealing to my humanity. Perhaps I can have, as a woman, I can have some understanding of what that feels like. So even if you couldn't afford the cake, I would want you to have a great experience, because I can identify with you and I can see what happiness I might be able to contribute to someone who I may have perceived has gone through so much already, right? So if you come forward, you're like, oh, I'm having a first birthday for my daughter, and she is my first after, say, X amount of losses. Girl, you will get a cake way more than you could afford. I've had husbands show up and be like, my wife is amazing. I want a cake to blow her off, because that's just my only chance to probably show her, or what. I know it will not make a difference, but I just want an opportunity for my wife to feel special. Look, I want to help you make a good impression with your wife, right? So if a man can speak about their wife to another person so openly and so lovingly, I want to be associated with that. So I don't care how much you are really paying me. The goal is to get to the heart of your intention and to support that intention come to light. And that is a good way you can get value for your cake. So be open, be vulnerable. That doesn't mean you should come and tell me all about your life story. I probably don't want to know about your life story, but there is also connection to be made from your intention for which you are ordering the cake. So put that forward, and perhaps that will change my mind and how I feel. I've made cakes for people for less than it cost, because the situation was so dire, and I would be not so a great human being if I wasn't trying to support them to have a good day. So whilst we are businesses, we are also humans, and we can identify with certain human emotions, and we just want you to have a good day. At the heart of my business is a person who is just passionate about cakes, who just wants to show up in the world with something which is more an art form in food for you. So come tell me about what exactly you want the cake for and what that cake means to you. And my goal will be to identify my association with that intention and help you get a good cake. But don't show up and be like, okay, I just want this cake. Because those cakes are not even as exciting. Because if I can identify an emotion with the cake, then I'm going to dig into the best part of my artistry to make sure I bring you extra value. And by the way, whilst we're talking about it, value is not always derived from maybe a discount or buying a cake less than you can afford. Value is derived from what I can bring to increase the presentation of the cake better than you would have actually paid for. That is where value is. So the word value here is subjective. I'm not giving you tips to go and bargain. In fact, half of the time, if you bargain for your cake, you don't get the cake you want. But value is, if you showed up, you're kind, you're nice, you want to create connection with your baker, you are able to put your intention forward. All the aforementioned things I have said, your baker will always find a way to add something to the cake. Either they may redesign the cake in a certain way, they may be able to add their skill and artistry to represent the cake in a different way better than you could actually have paid for. And that is where value is derived from. In the chat, I have a question from Acacia. Is it Acacia Makeup? Good afternoon, Gladys. Is it possible to have any taste test? Is it from me? Do you mean getting taste tests from me, or on the subject matter when you are get ordering a cake? Do you want taste tests? I don't know what you mean. At the moment, I don't have any taste tests on offer at all. In fact, I used to only offer cake taste tests for wedding cakes, but I have even had to rethink that one. So if you're asking for cake tasting, I am so sorry, not from me. But if you're not, unless you're buying a wedding cake, normally most cake makers do not offer cake tasters anyway. So that is something to kind of bear in mind. With that said, our cake has been in the oven for, I think, 45 minutes now. We have half an hour to go. Oh, my mouth is dry. If you have further questions, leave them in the chat. I'm just waiting for us to see our cakes and then take them out. But whilst we're at it, if you haven't already liked the video, do leave a like and join the community here. And your company and presence will be much appreciated. I'm just going to get myself some water. With that said, our cake is already baking. So let's give it a few minutes and then we'll see what that looks like on the inside. With that said, I also wanted to give you an okay. I make a point to not be very specific because people have different circumstances. But sometimes customers show up and they show up withholding information. For instance, there's a perception in cake making or in the business of cakes where people feel as though if they have to say they need a cake for a wedding, the price of their cakes will differ because of the word wedding. I know that is a thing in the industry, but it's not a thing across board. If a wedding cake maker will increase their prices because it is a wedding, you will find that information on their website or wherever you are sourcing their information from. You will know. So if you withhold information from a baker just so that you can get like you can avoid what you perceive as an overly priced cake, you are not setting yourself up for a good outcome. And perhaps more often than not, you're not going to get the best experience. At least, you know what, this is not the same for everyone. And I think the discussion is set on my own experience, which is my own, and that doesn't necessarily apply for everybody. There are people who I know feel as though as businesses, you're paid to make a cake and that is it. So as long as you're paying, they are taking the cake. And that's not necessarily how I approach my business. Okay. It's not all about the money. I have to wake up in my home. I have to put my heart and my thought into something that is so important to you. It is more than money for me. So if you reduce my interaction with you to just, I'm paying you, get to work, it skewers my perception and experience with you differently. And just as customers want to have a great cake, good value, and all that, cake makers also want to have a great experience with their customers. And on that note, I go back to the subject where if you withhold information from a cake maker, perhaps you'll be dealing with somebody who wouldn't mind. For me, trust is so important that if you did that, you'd be breaching my belief of trust between you and I. And for that, perhaps you may not get a cake. But that is neither here nor there. I had a very specific experience recently that I kind of feel, for the sake of business, I just can't go into the specifics. But it was so peculiar that I was left scratching my head because the customer essentially wanted a wedding cake, but they didn't want to say it was a wedding cake. So I think at some point it became important that I inquired the purpose of the cake because they were seeking a few different things from me, because the processes for a wedding cake is slightly different. Because say if you were asking me to set your wedding cake up, you would require me to produce my public liability insurance, for instance, to the venue, and you would require me to have, or I would require you to have a person of contact, because on the day I'm setting your cake, you will be too busy getting yourself ready, and weddings are stressful. So it's not going to serve me to just be dealing with you. So there are so many moving parts to setting up a wedding cake. And on this particular one, the person wouldn't tell me they were having a wedding, yet they expected that I produced all of these things and there would be a contact. I'm like, is this cake for a wedding? And they didn't say. They said it was for friends. And it was only after I had quoted for the cake. Not that it would have mattered, you know, it wouldn't matter at all to me if the prices of wedding cakes are displayed openly on my website. So it wouldn't have made any difference at all to me if they were upfront. But I don't know where their experience was set, whether the experience was set in something that was happening behind the scenes. When I inquired about whether the cake was for a wedding, they brushed it off, except after I issued their quote, they came back making all these demands. Unfortunately, I had to decline the cake order altogether. And that was simply because it left me feeling, for whatever reason that you have withheld this information from me, is it likely that when I take this order down the line, you will come up with something that I hadn't anticipated? Because then I just couldn't regain my belief of trust with them. And that was a very peculiar circumstance where I was left scratching my head a little bit. So, on the subject of trying to get value for your cake, be open, be honest, be vulnerable, and open with your intention and what the cake means to you. Be interested in understanding what the cake maker does, what their expertise is, what they can offer you. And if you have a budget, don't be too scared to talk about money. After all, you're buying something. However else you perceive your money is, whether you think your money is just not enough or it's too little, you're still going to have to pay for the product one way or the other. So be open with your money and you'd be surprised how far that will go for you. And on that note, we have a cake baking. So I'm going to check in the oven so we can see. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Normally, even if you observe your... We're in my home kitchen and I have a postman at my door, okay? Right. Even when the cake is baked, you want to make sure that it's cooked evenly. Thank you for your patience. It's my postman. My postman. Okay. The cake is baked. It's baked. It's baked. It's baked. We are exactly... I said 55 minutes and we are 55 minutes in and the cake is baked. The red velvet.
Please do. Thank you.
Yep. And it has baked really well. I'm really pleased with that. If you've been here before we put the cakes in the oven, and if you find I'm a little bit oily on the face, that is because my kitchen is hot because the oven has been on. Well, our cakes are baked. They have baked well. So, as you can see, the recipe has worked incredibly well. And on top of all of that, I have also given you some tips on how to get the best out of your cake. So as you can see, we have our cakes that are baked. I don't know why I've just turned it down. I've turned it that way so you can see. But that's our cakes all done. All 4 baked. No issues here. Right. Excitingly, I'd like to stay here and keep talking to you. But the goal was to invite you into my kitchen where I undertake a bake and you get to see the results. See, we have an evenly baked top over here. And even when this, there you go. There you have it. So what I am going to do is leave it to set for 5 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it in cling film and